talk about the bonus section I was going to look at with you. But at this point, if you have questions, start throwing them at me. I'm totally open to it. We've got about 19 minutes left. While you're steaming and thinking, I'm going to go ahead and show you a quick way to confirm connectivity to a server. And again, we'll go into much more detail on this in the quick take session, but I just want to show you the tool that I'm going to be using, right? So it's totally possible that you may get, and usually it's SQL servers, you may get a message in your console stating unable to collect server information against this server, right? And typically what that means is that we aren't able to get that initial WMI connection to that remote server, right? And it's really a problem at the OS level, right? So probably there's some setting in that SQL server preventing remote WMI connections. An easy way to test it is a Windows tool known as Wbem Test. Some of you may be familiar with it. Essentially, it's just an external WMI counter management tool. It enumerates WMI counters from wherever we want. So if I use this connect button, I can add to that namespace, we'll talk about namespaces again in a second, the specific server scope, for instance, and, give my collection service credentials, which in this case is going to be support test / Roy M. Give it my password. Authority is not necessary. Authority, you would have put the domain if you hadn't strung it like this. But so I'm going to go ahead and connect, and as we can see, it'll connect and it'll allow me to start making WMI queries to that server, or more importantly, enumerating classes. Now, if I do a recursive blank enumeration, I'll see all the different WMI classes available on that server. Maybe we had a message in our console that said, hey, unable to collect a specific class from server X. Well, we could use this tool to go see, hey, does that class even exist on that server? Maybe it isn't. And there are plenty of ways that a WMI's class repository can get compromised or maybe not get initially configured or registered. And there are definitely steps to go through that can help us to rebuild those class lists. By default, when you first install SharePoint, you should have tons of SharePoint WMI counters available from Perfmon and WMI. Same thing goes for SQL Server, but it's totally possible to overlook those or not install them or not register the DLLs or not have the WMI counters there for whatever reason. This helps us determine, hey, are the things that we're trying to collect actually there? You know what I mean? Can we actually connect to the server from this machine to even try these collections? 9 times out of 10, if DM can't collect a particular metric, it's probably because that metric either doesn't exist or the server isn't allowing remote WMI connections. And again, this is an easy way to test those kind of things outside of the tool to prove out what is it we need to be troubleshooting, right? Because it's easy to get into the perspective of, hey, DM isn't collecting stuff, what's wrong with DM? When in fact, it is very likely some block from the OS level at this point, right? So anyway, this is a cool little handy utility, and it's included on all versions of Windows since I think 2003. And just to refresh your memory, that was Wbem Test. And just to note, if we go into the tools help, we actually have a section that goes into really great detail about that tool and about WMI counters in general and what we're collecting. So once the help comes up, I'll show you that, but it seems to be taking its sweet time. There we go. So if I do I don't even need to do a search. Managing Metalogix Diagnostic Manager gives me some information. Oh, have they changed this on me? Uh-oh. Here, let's just do a search then. Do a WMI search. Huh. Really? They changed the help on me in the new version. So let me see if I can find this. This looks clunky. Well, I'll have to get it. We have a PD in our in our old chum file, let me just see if I can look at it directly. There were, yeah, here we go. Learning about performance monitoring. Here we can see some really great information about what we're grabbing, right? So here's some links about the diagnostic utility, the old WMI diagnostic utility, and they're in another section I'll show you in a second down here. We'll see some Wbem Test stuff. So this gives us a breakdown of what are we actually getting. We're collecting from these namespaces. Now remember in the WMI tool, you notice I was connected to a specific namespace. In this case, root CIMV2 used to collect performance information. Root default is used to access the registry when we first add a farm. Root, et cetera, used to get SQL Server instances, old SQL Server instances, cluster data, et cetera. So essentially, we're collecting from multiple namespace scopes to get various data, and then these are the actual objects we're collecting, right? For CPU, these are the WMI counters that we're collecting. You know, so these are the things we'd be looking for. And again, this is very, very advanced. I mean, this is troubleshooting that you'll probably be involved with support by the time you get to this point, but food for thought, right? Here's a list of everything we're collecting from every different scope. So those of you power users out there, this is pretty cool and helpful information, just so you can get a baseline and compare. You know, compare what you get from Perfmon to what we get in the tool, right? Down here in the Managing Metalogic Diagnostic Manager, troubleshooting WMI issues is the very bottom node. And here we can see some actual step-by-step on using the Wbem Test utility to access WMI for computer. Lots of really good information here. Information on how to determine if counters are disabled. Information on what you should do to repair WMI repositories or re-register WMI DLL files. Lots of really great information here on the subject of WMI counters in general. And again, everything that we collect is WMI, pretty much everything we collect is WMI based. So yeah, this is definitely great information to look at. Again, this chum file is located in the main directory for Diagnostic Manager. I'm not 100% sure why I wasn't able to see it from within the tools. Maybe there's some issue with the new mechanism, but you can always just double-click this here and get this view that I'm looking at here. Right? So learning about performance monitoring, retrieving server performance counters gives us everything that we're grabbing. And the very bottom node, troubleshooting WMI issues, gives us a lot of really handy information about troubleshooting those WMI connections. So get those to read if you're interested. And again, I'm going to go through a lot of stuff in detail in the next quick take session. So if you want, join that one and we'll talk about it in detail. But at this point, I think that's everything I've got. So let's use the last 10 or 11 minutes to get some questions in. Let me know what you want to talk about or what you want to see in the minutes that we have left. Is it possible to monitor a specific process? Yeah, no. The answer is no at this point. The answer is, well, we have a development item to supply metrics for that, but because we're limited to what WMI can provide us, we can't yet do specifically what you're after. This is a cool feature request that we really want to see happen, monitoring things on a process-by-process basis, but it technically kind of goes beyond the scope of what the tool is currently designed to do. But we're hopeful that we'll see that in the future. I don't know when that would be. It's something, again, similar to the report automation. It's kind of, we're kicking the tires around on it in the background. All the development effort has primarily been focused on optimizing the code that we got during the acquisition. And that's why you're seeing so many changes in content summary, changes in the UI, look and feel, and so on and so forth, those of you who are familiar with the old Idea version. But yeah, so most of this has been maintenance, so we're just now getting to the point where we're able to dedicate quarters to feature requests and the like. So yeah, we should hope to see those soon. I just don't have an immediate answer as to when we would. Looks like William's got something coming to me. But let's see. You add non-SharePoint servers to be monitored. Correct? That is correct. Yeah. So literally any server. Because again, remember, we're collecting most of the metrics, in fact, that we collect are not even really specifically SharePoint related. So all this stuff, CPU, disk, memory, network, server, all these different categories are really just standard WMI counters, right? So I could technically add literally any server available on the network that is visible and at least get things like CPU, memory, and the like. So the answer is yes, we can totally add. For instance, this SharePoint 2010A has nothing to do with this farm whatsoever. It's just a server that used to host SharePoint, no longer does. Workflow foundation steps would be awesome. I agree. Again, that's going beyond the scope of WMI counters and getting more into SharePoint API monitoring stuff, or in terms of the methodology, we'd have to leverage SharePoint API to get to that stuff. And again, all on the chalkboard, I just don't know what the, you know what I mean? I'm just support, so we'd have to get product management input to get answers as to when we might see some of that stuff. But yeah, these are all cool things that we want to see, right? Matter of fact, workflow foundation stats would be particularly awesome, quite honestly. Glenn's got one here for me. Is there docs that note specific ports for communication? The reason I asked is that we're undergoing server segmentation on our network. I just want to know specifics. Yeah, absolutely. So in the same chunk we were looking at earlier, that I closed for some unknown reason, we can see this is in the help. This is also in the installation guide, but under installing and deploying, under requirements, one of these nodes. There we go. Components and architecture communication ports. Management console uses 5292 and 5294 to communicate with the collection service depending on the security protocol. And then you must allow outbound communications on 5292 and 93 from the computer that hosts a management console. So essentially, 5292, 93, and 94 are the three primary ports we use to connect between management console and collection service. If your console is hosted on the same machine with your collection service, none of that matters. It's all going to talk. But if you're using a remote console, then yeah, these are the ports we're communicating over. And again, this is just under learning about the components and architecture, learning about communication ports in our primary help file. Again, there's an advanced installation guide that comes packaged with the tool in PDF format, also has the same information. In fact, I think I have that. Yep, no problem. All right, any other questions? If not, we may be at a point where we can complete this Academy course. I hope that it's been informative. I hope everyone feels that they got something out of it. I know there's a lot to cover, obviously, in 3 sessions. So, again, this is the kind of tool where you really need to go in and dig in and start playing with stuff to really get your head around it. But hopefully we covered the most important bits in the top level to get you started on configuring your environment.